For a little bit of a postscript, I wanted to mention these aids that they have. In terms of keeping up with the production, this is a great way to keep track of it. What you do is you just put an icon on where it is, and then as it moves up or down as you take or lose territory, it's a great way to keep track so you don't have to count up at the end of each turn. And also in terms of the turn order, each country has one of these. It mentions all the starting positions when you're setting it up. It also mentions the turn order as well as the sequence, the point, cost, value, attack, and movement of all the different objects. Definitely very useful. And when you're doing your attack, you get to go. It's sometimes very helpful to place the attacking and defending objects on this board, because both with attack and defense, it puts the troops in the appropriate position in which dice controls hits. For example, infantry for defending are 2, but for attacking they're 1. And artillery is here at 2, and then there's a special slot for infantry supported by artillery. So what you would do is you would move, for as many artillery you would have, you would move that many infantry into this location. Same thing they even have here with if it's a super submarine, which increases the attack, or jet fighters, which increase the defense. So this is very helpful for keeping track of the combat, and just doing your dice rolls someplace else onto the side is very helpful. As you get more experience with play and you want to add a little bit of variation, there's also these additional rules for different countries. Have different ones. They're all unique. Usually you just agree to a certain number that each side will get to choose, whether it's 1 or 2. Rarely would you choose to have all 6, because you usually want to do something that is going to contribute to a strategy that you want to have. So the Soviet Union has Russian Winter, Non-Aggression Treaty, Mobile Industry, Salvage, Lend-Lease, Trans-Siberian Highway. I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'm going to go through some of my particular favorite ones. The non-aggression treaty is actually relatively useful for the Soviets because it helps defend their western flank. What it does is if the Japanese ever attack them for the first time, you get to place 4 infantry just there for free before you even do the combat. So essentially gives the Japanese a disincentive to do that first attack. That's the best one that I like. I also like salvage, which if you win a combat against attacking tanks and you win, you get to convert one of those tanks. In terms of the Germans, I really like U-boat interdiction. For every U-boat that you have during the income phase of both the UK and the US, you get to subtract 1 from each one of theirs, which is great. So 1 U-boat is technically taking away 2 credits per turn. So you can really build up a very large U-boat fleet and really mess them up. Fortress Europe is pretty useful as well. Artillery and gray territories defend at a 3 instead of a 1. That's also pretty useful. Atlantic Wall, which gives all infantry defend at a 3 during the first wave of combat, is also pretty useful. But I definitely like the U-boat interdiction. For the United Kingdom, there are several that I like. I really like radar, which allows your anti-aircraft guns to roll at a 2 instead of a 1. There are 2 anti-aircraft guns that the British are going to have. They have one in London or England, which is going to be used all the time, particularly if the Germans are doing bombing against you, which they will likely no longer do in fear of your anti-aircraft guns. Something that I didn't mention in the overall review is bombers can do strategic bombing, in which you fly over a capital, you roll, and whatever your attack value is, you get to remove that from their money inventory. So radar is a great defense against that. It's also useful for the anti-aircraft gun that you have in India. So all the more reason to build a factory there, which is also related to my next favorite British one. Is Colonial Garrison. At the beginning of the game, you get to place one industrial factory, and I always like putting it in India. French resistance is also useful, as well as some of the other ones, but those two are my favorite if I'm the British. For the Japanese, Tokyo Express is pretty interesting. It allows your destroyers to act as a transport for one infantry. Really allows you to hold on to those islands, reinforce them, as well as maybe attack the Alaska and Hawaii with greater force. I also like dug-in defenders. All your infantry on islands defend at a 3. That's very useful because the bulk of Japanese territory is islands, including the mainland or the capital. So I definitely like that one. In terms of the United States, I really like my absolute favorite is super fortresses. Your B-29 super fortress are immune to anti-aircraft guns. That is really useful because essentially you can put some bombers in England and then bomb Germany every turn. You're never going to risk losing them, and if you attack with enough, you'll be able to take away 10 points every turn all the time. And not to mention, as Africa gets more reinforced and protected, you could even throw a bomber or two in Egypt and then bomb Southern Europe each turn. So that's particularly useful. Mechanized infantry is also useful. It allows your infantry to move as a 2 as well. It would be even better if your artillery would go with them, but that's pretty useful. Chinese divisions, it allows you to place one infantry in any Chinese territories that you have, but that could be kind of, by doing that, it will give an incentive for the Japanese to hold on to their territories even more. But super fortresses are great. In addition to, one reason why I like super fortresses is there are special weapons you can research. This version of the game, what you do is you roll the dice. If you get a success on that, then you get to choose you choose which weapon that you want to get, and then you roll, and then you get that one. So, I've been lucky and I've gotten heavy bombers, which allows you to roll 2 dice instead of just 1, which is huge, particularly if you have bombers that are immune to anti-aircraft guns. But some of these other ones are particularly useful. If you're the Germans, super submarines have its uses. If you're Japan and you're going to be building a lot of destroyers, you can have combined bombardment, which allows your destroyers to do an amphibious assault. An amphibious assault is whenever there is a landing from the sea, every battleship that you have in that sea territory will roll its dice, and it gets to do 1 damage before any of the troops land, essentially. So by pairing that up with the destroyers, which roll at a 3, you can really possibly wipe out an island before you take place of it. If you're the Americans and you have heavy bombers and you have super fortresses, you may also want to get long-range aircraft, which increases the range of both your fighters and your bombers. That's pretty useful. Both the British and the Germans jet fighters are also very could be useful because you get to have a defense of 5 rather than 4, which is really brutal. The rockets are really good for the Germans because rather doing a bombing and risking your bomber's life whenever you do a strategic bombing, you just can do rockets, and you only roll 1 dice rather than being able to take multiple aircraft, but there's no risk of losing any of your stuff. So different countries have different, depending on your strategies of which research you should go for. If you do want to do research, the earlier on you do it, the better, because then you'll have that for a longer period of the game. I usually only do 2 or 3 at a time, because if you get multiple successes, that doesn't do anything for you. But heavy bombers for the United States and possibly also Germany is probably the most valuable, because it doubles the attack of all your bombers. Unfortunately, I don't see Russia ever buying any of these. They're usually too poor to ever even hope to be able to concentrate on one of these developments. But for all the other countries, they definitely have their purposes. So I hope that's been helpful, and thank you for this little postscript. Bye.